BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all of your sports betting action. With baseball season in full swing, BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the games are still being played. We keep the dog days of summer rolling with the largest selection of odds on everything, with updated odds on Major League Baseball, UFC, and boxing, to tennis, and NFL futures. BetOnline remains the best online source for all of your sports wagering information. In between games, just head on over to the BetOnline Casino with all of the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. BetOnline, the game starts here.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of the Bleav in Bengal podcast. Yours truly, Solomon Wilcots, and PFF lead analyst Trevor Sikkema joining us on the show. Trevor, it's been a while since you've joined us. You've been busy, my friend. How you doing?
I'm doing good. The summer's doing good. I think the last time I talked to you was pre-draft. I think it was actually even before the draft happened. But, Sully, it's always good to be on with you, man. I appreciate you having me on the show as always.
Well, it's always good to have the big brains on the show, and guys who can lend, just a little bit different way of looking at things. We love the content and the information that you provide. Today, we want to talk about the Cincinnati Bengals. And I understand that on PFF, you guys have recently went about ranking the offensive lines as we look across the landscape of the National Football League heading into the upcoming 2025 season. Talk to me about where you see the Cincinnati Bengals offensive line. They've added some new pieces. Where do they fall in your ranking?
Yeah, so Zoltan was the one who did the offensive line rankings for us for the article because every week of the NFL season, he goes and he updates the offensive line rankings. So we wanted to sort of keep the continuity, allow him to set those initial offensive line rankings. He has the Bengals at 31, and I don't know if I would have the Bengals at 31, but that's kind of around the area just because of the uncertainty, right? I mean, in theory, you could believe in some of the changes that they've made. I like Dylan Fairchild. I obviously love the ceiling of Omarius Mims. Orlando Brown Jr. is a great offensive tackle when he is fully healthy and playing with good guys around him with that type of continuity. And so you feel good about what could be. They certainly could finish the season well higher than that 31st overall ranking, but it is a little bit worrisome specifically because you have an all-world quarterback in Joe Burrow who, for as phenomenal as he is, he's not the most mobile guy in the world. So if pressure's coming at him, yes, he's excellent at avoiding pressure and navigating the pocket between the tackles, but still, he's not the best escape artist like guys like Jalen Hurts or Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson or guys like that. And so you have to think about when you have an offensive line that gives up pressures, for the Bengals specifically, it's more detrimental. And when you look at this team, they were 28th in the NFL last year in total team pass blocking grade. And so I think everybody would tell you that it wasn't good enough specifically along the interior offensive line. Now you got Ted Karras, the veteran, coming back at that center spot. We're not sure exactly who's going to play the most snaps at either of those guard positions. You have a couple of those positions up for grabs there. But I think what you're really hoping is that you're hoping that those two giant mountains at left and right tackle have career years, right? That's what you need, especially from Mims, who you want him to just have a fully healthy season. That's what you really need. He's got all the talent in the world. And so, again, it's a situation where it's hard to look at the Bengals offensive line compared to what they were last year and say totally fixed. We're all good to go. Top half of the league. There's those areas of concern, but there are some reasons of optimism if you believe that these guys are going to be fully healthy and that they're going to play as a cohesive unit for all 17 regular season games. So they came in at number 32 or 31 out of 32 on our rankings. And sort of that's how Zoltan saw them going into the year.
And Trevor, look, this is their second reboot, right? Since the Super Bowl run in 2021, which, let's face it, Joe Burrow was one of the most sacked quarterbacks in the league during a Super Bowl run.
Right.
And that year in the offseason, they wanted to sort of get strong up the middle. They bring over Ted Karras. They change over the guards, and they get more veterans there. So here's a situation where now they bring over Lucas Patrick in the middle. They bring over Dylan Fairchild. They leave Ted Karras there at the center position. Joe Burrow is the kind of quarterback that wants to climb the pocket. He wants to get vertical in the pocket. If they could just keep him clean up the middle, you and I both know that's going to go a long way. Think about this. Even though they weren't great at protecting their quarterback last year, he still was one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. So all we're looking at maybe is marginal improvement on the interior portion of this offensive line. And that could go, I think, perceivably, that could go a long way for Joe Burrow.
Yeah, I agree. And when you look at guys like Dylan Fairchild and guys like Lucas Patrick, like they are those athletic offensive linemen who you're hoping, obviously pairing with the offensive tackles that have the great size on the edges, you're hoping that gives you the ability to, okay, when pressure is coming at you, because there's there's a lot of different ways to play offensive line, but when you look at a power versus sort of finesse way to play the position, a power way to play the position is you would say like, okay, well, you got the guys up front, you got the interior offensive linemen that are coming at them, and those power players, they're really looking to anchor. They're looking to put their feet in the ground. They're looking to get their hands up and inside, and they're looking to sort of maintain the line of scrimmage right there. And that can, in theory, sort of form a wall right in front of the quarterback, and the quarterback really doesn't have to move too much, and you're hoping that they could just sit back and wherever their drop step eventually stops, 3, 5, 7, whatever that looks like. But for a speed, or I would say finesse offensive lineman, which I would say that Lucas Patrick and Dylan Fairchild sort of are, you maybe more are trying to mirror what pass rushers do and almost like sort of like usher them around where the quarterback is, where you're not exactly like saying, okay, I'm gonna stand my ground right here off the snap and we're gonna fight in a phone booth here. You're sort of trying to redirect their weight and their momentum. And when you have those types of interior offensive linemen, that does sort of open up an area where Joe Burrow might be able to step up in the pocket or let pressure go, to the left or right of him. And he's able to sort of navigate it and step up that way. So I like that you bring up that example of sort of what Joe Burrow likes to do well, because as much as he is not an escape artist, like I mentioned, he is shifty. He is somebody who knows how to navigate that pocket from inside the tackles. And so I do wonder if those two offensive guards, if they are going to be the full-time starters, if that does really play into his advantage of being able to step up a little bit more as pressure sort of comes to the left or right of him and he's able to avoid it and step up like that.
As you well know, the quick game is increasingly becoming a much bigger part of how offenses are playing in the National Football League. They're asking the quarterbacks to be very fast processors, see it, read it, get the ball out quick. Let's not get caught holding it. No one is doing that right now better than Joe Burrow. I think he's been forced to over the last several years with not having great protection from the offensive line. They've kind of gone in this direction, I think, ahead of a lot of other teams. Joe, let's process it quickly. Let's get rid of the ball quickly, get it in the hands of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. As it turns out, he led the league in some phenomenal categories last year. But getting the ball out quick and then getting chunk yards off of that quick passing game seems to be one of the things he was really good at. It seems to be one of the things the offense has been really good at. What more can you tell us about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I mean, I think that a lot of the numbers back it up. I don't have exactly what they are in front of me, but there's no doubt whether it's the time to throw numbers, the yards after catch numbers, yes, yards after catch goes into the athleticism of the wide receiver and kind of who they are and their talents, but it also goes into timing. It also goes into the quarterback's evaluation of the defense pre-snap. I mean, that's what Tom Brady was so phenomenal at for so many years is Tom Brady wasn't necessarily just chucking it 50, 60 yards down the field. I mean, the year that he had Randy Moss, he was, but outside of that, you think of when you think of Tom Brady and a lot of that success, some of the names that kind of come to mind are, like Deion Branch and Wes Welker and Julian Edelman. And it's like, these guys aren't these phenomenal deep threat type of wide receivers. The timing was just so good between Brady and these guys that the quick game was phenomenal and they were able to catch up these chunk yards. Now, I think the Bengals should be very, very thankful that they have Jamar Chase specifically because you mentioned it over the last couple of years. I think that Cincinnati has had to go with the quick game out of necessity for sort of a lack of the offensive line really being able to hold up. And so the quick game has been a major part of what they've done. And then, the correlation and causation, okay, this that leads to that sort of that offensive game plan type of a feel is often, all right, you attack with the quick game, and then that forces the corners to come up a little bit, the safeties to come up a little bit. And then once they do that, what do? You hit it over their head. You give them a little fake move. You give them a little double move. You give them a little inside out. And all of a sudden you're up the sideline, like a sluggo route or something where, maybe you take one step inside and then boom, you're going up the sideline and you're attacking the outside shoulder of where the cornerback is, especially once they start to play inside leverage on you, right? If you start to get a lot of inside leverage because they're scared of that slant, mesh, screen, quick game, and they want to get to the inside, that's when you can really burn them to the outside. But if you don't have the offensive line to hold up, it's hard to hit those home run balls, right? The benefit for the Bengals is Ja'Marr Chase is just straight up one of the best one-on-one wide receivers in the NFL. So even when he's not open, he's open, right? So it's kind of one of those situations where Burrow, it's funny, his time to throw was still lower, if you will, on some of those deep shots after the quick play. And he's like, hey, you know what? I'm just going to go give him a chance. And those contested catch opportunities with both him and now T. Higgins, obviously, as well. The Bengals just, it's funny because we just did a PFF episode about the offensive line rankings. And before the episode started, my co-host, Dalton Wasserman, who does a fantastic job covering the league as well, he said, he's like, hey, sometimes you get these offensive lines that if they're not good enough, you're almost eliminating a team from Super Bowl contention, like right off the bat. And it was funny that we had the Bengals at 31. And I said to him, I was like, there's no way you're eliminating the Bengals, right? And he's like, no. The Bengals are one of those teams that it's different because you look at the struggles of their offensive line and it just shouldn't work. But Burrow, Chase, and Higgins are so good at specifically that, at specifically winning one-on-one and contested catch opportunities down the field that you get both the quick game and the deep passing, even though they haven't quite figured out the offensive line yet. So it's still a potent offense, even with the offensive line not exactly where it needs to be yet.
I think this is where Zach Taylor, the Bengals head coach, offensive coordinator, sort of the architect of what they do offensively, I don't think he gets nearly enough credit. The fact that they scored 30 or more points in 8 of their games last year. Now, they were 4-4 in those games. They should have won more of them had they had any assistance from the defense. But given the poor play of the offensive line and the fact that they're still productive offensively says something about what Zach Taylor is doing with this offense. Obviously, he's got Joe Burrow, he's got Ja'Marr Chase and T. Higgins. I want to kind of talk about some of the secondary weapons on this offense right now, because I do think that we don't talk enough about what an Andre Iosivas, if Jermaine Burton lives up to his potential in 2025, you throw in Mike Gesicki and Chase Brown. What do you like about the secondary members of this offense that gives them equal amount of production? I would say if you look at those 4 guys, if you take away Ja'Marr Chase, which is hard to do, if you take away T. Higgins, which is doubly hard to do, these guys have proven that they can be ancillary pieces to help Joe Burrow in the offense.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you want, right? I mean, that's why you drafted Jermaine Burton. That's why you signed a Mike Gesicki. You have these guys to where he goes, okay, well, and especially I think that's why they made it the priority that they did, bringing back both Ja'Marr Chase and T. Higgins, because you could say to yourself, like, okay, if you double Ja'Marr Chase, we're going to throw the ball to T. Higgins. But if you sort of allocate even more resources, like if you almost try to double team both of these guys, you're hoping that anybody on the team is going to be able to beat a one-on-one, and they're going to have an advantageous situation. Now, to me, Jermaine Burton holds the key. Like, Jermaine Burton holds the key from this offense scoring. You said scored 30 points on 8 games last year. I mean, they could score more than 30 points on
every week,
every single week. And if you have a guy like Jermaine Burton, who, I mean, I loved his film when he was at Alabama. I mean, he showcased just unbelievable body control and route running and everything, but he's got to figure it out. He's got to grow into becoming a pro, it feels like. And that seemed like, from the reports that we heard, it wasn't necessarily in the building following the team every single week, but from the reports that we heard, like, that was really what held him back from getting out there and contributing more. Is he had to be more reliable both on and off the field. And if he is, I agree with you. You throw him in with Andre Iosivas, who I think could be a fine wide receiver 3 for you. Charlie Jones as well, who week in and week out might be able to give you a little bit of something at that wide receiver 4 and wide receiver 5 position. And I mean, obviously, you signed Mike Gesicki to do exactly that as well. I like Chase Brown, man. I'm a big Chase Brown fan.
Yeah.
Loved him when he was at Illinois.
Yeah.
Funny enough, I didn't know this until after the draft when I was doing more deep digging into him. He actually, now him and his brother are from Canada, but they ended up moving down to Florida to play high school football down in Florida.
Yeah.
He actually went to my rival high school, not while I was there, but he went to my rival high school. And I was like, oh no, I got to figure out how many yards I think he rushed for like 243 yards on 10 carries against my high school. So that wasn't fun to learn. But I mean, this is somebody who, man, a phenomenal final season that he had when he was at Illinois. I know he wins with athleticism. A lot of people know him as just a really good athlete, but man, go watch that last year at Illinois. I mean, he's a tough-nosed runner. He's got the mentality that you want. He'll run behind the pads. He's not afraid of contact. Like, I really do believe that Chase Brown can be a RB1 caliber type of player for you who can at least give you some value on all three downs. So getting back to sort of what you were talking about, I think that Jermaine Burton really holds the key to this being one of the most potent offenses in the NFL. And if he doesn't work out, it's still a top 5 scoring offense, but it's just a matter of how unstoppable are they? How much are they really going to demand that if you don't score 30 points, we're going to beat you? And I think that is a tall task for any team in the NFL, and the Bengals have an opportunity to do that.
All right, Trevor, now the heavy lifting begins. We've got to talk about Trey Hendrickson because, listen, I think there's a lot of mixed messages circulating around this player. 17 and a half sacks each of the last 2 years is something that cannot be ignored. If you and I were producing the kind of numbers that Trey Hendrickson has been able to produce the last 2 years, we would go and ask our boss for a raise. Let's just be right. We would be, I think we would be legitimate in asking for one. But for whatever reason, everyone wants to have a conversation about Trey. Yeah, but my English professor in college said that anything that comes before the word but doesn't count. Okay? So people say, yeah, he led the league in sacks, but, and then they want to say what they really feel about Trey Hendrickson, but he doesn't align anywhere else on the field. Yeah, he had all these sacks, but they came against weak left tackles that he dominated against. He stacked his sacks in consecutive games against weak competition. Help me. He's 30 years old, about to turn 31. Yeah, but all of these things to try to devalue what he's accomplished. What's the skinny? Help us out here in terms of who and what is the real Trey Hendrickson and what is his real value to this football team?
Yeah, I think his real value is that if you don't have him, you're not making it to the Super Bowl. That's it. That's it to me. And if the Bengals have the opportunity, like even with him being 30 years old, if you say to yourself, okay, we're going to sign you to a 2-year extension on top of like the money you have, and we're kind of reworking the contract and signing it to an extension, you're basically saying, and especially because here's the thing, right? You signed Joe Burrow to the big contract, right? So he's not working off the rookie contract anymore. He's obviously making franchise caliber quarterback money. So you signed him to the big contract. Now you sign these 2 wide receivers to massive money as well. Now is not the time to try to like pinch pennies on star players, right? Like if you want to pinch pennies on, say, like the secondary and like ancillary players, like you were mentioning, like, okay, we're going to go a little bit younger here. We're going to start a rookie in this spot. Like we're going to try to go bargain bin shopping for like a veteran here and there. That's where you're trying to get lucky. You're not trying to get lucky playing hardball with Trey Hendrickson and expecting to get something out of Joseph Osai or Miles Murphy or Shemar Stewart that you just simply have not seen yet. Even though I am excited about what Al Golden is going to be for its defense, I think specifically for the secondary, I think that it's absolutely perfect with what DJ Turner and Dax Hill could be in the secondary, what Geno Stone could be in that free safety spot. Like I love what this defense could be on the back end. It doesn't work if Trey Hendrickson's not there. And I think it is as simple as if you let him walk or if you let him not play this year, you are not the best you are hoping for is first round of the playoffs. The absolute best that you are hoping for is first round of the playoffs. And even that, even for a potent offense as what the Bengals is going to be. You mentioned it. They scored 30 points last year in 8 games. They went 4-4. How much more difficult do you think that gets without Hendrickson? And so the thing is, like you started with this question, it's not like Hendrickson's asking you for something that he hasn't already proven. And I understand you want to sign guys to contracts where they are worth the value of the deal when they're playing on the deal. I get that. You don't want to necessarily pay players for things that they've already done if you don't think they're going to continue to do them. I get all of that stuff. But he is still playing at a very high level consistently. And you've got to be able to look at the fact that you cannot win a Super Bowl or even make a deep playoff run or maybe even survive in the toughest division in the NFL if you do not have this player. And so to me, that's simply what it comes down to. He's not asking you to pay him for something that he hasn't done and that he hasn't already proven. He's probably asking for you to make him a top 5, if not top 3 paid edge rusher in a couple of different areas. And you know that those numbers are going to get adjusted as the salary cap continues to go up, as guys continue to sign deals after him and Aiden Hutchinson, a Micah Parsons, or whatever. Those guys are going to, if you sign Trey Hendrickson to a deal right now that makes him the 3rd highest paid edge rusher in the NFL, because what do we got here? We got Myles Garrett at the top, and then I can't remember what's the total guarantee. It's like Nick Bosa's right after that. If you say, hey, we're going to put you kind of in that right ahead of where Max Crosby is, make you the 3rd highest paid edge rusher in the NFL, well, all of a sudden, like, Aiden Hutchinson and Micah Parsons are going to pass that when they sign their deals in the year from
absolutely.
now.
Yes.
So
yes,
all of this to say, like, to me, it simply comes down to you have signed that triforce of offensive weapons with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. If you don't keep Trey Hendrickson happy,
that's right.
There was no point in you doing that because you can't get to a Super Bowl without him the way that your defense is currently constructed. Yeah. That's the way that I think about it.
Yeah, all right. Look, I think Shemar Stewart asked the right question. Are you doing all of this to win the argument, or are you doing all of this to win games?
Yeah.
Because if you're doing this to win games, signing Trey Hendrickson makes all the sense in the world. If you're doing it to try to meet these certain metrics to say, hey, look, we took care of Joe Burrow because we gave him his wide receivers, but don't finish the deal by signing your other players, then I think you're falling short and you're really playing the middle. And so this one's going to be really interesting to see what happens here. Why am I more optimistic, given that Trey Hendrickson and TJ Watt are the same age, 30 years old, getting ready to be 31? Why am I more optimistic that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to get TJ Watt signed to a deal and maybe Trey Hendrickson, maybe not? I like to believe the Bengals are going to get this deal done, but I don't feel as optimistic as I do about the Steelers getting their guys signed. Same position, same age. Why is that?
Yeah, and I think it's just because of the evidence, right? I mean, and the Bengals have just sort of like had, and I don't know why it's like this, but it feels like they've played hardball with a lot of their guys, whether it was Higgins or Chase, and I understand, like it's a negotiations game.
Yes,
we only ever really hear from the player side of things. We don't really hear from the front office and the owner side of things. So I understand all of that, but you look at the Steelers are all in, right? They're signing Darius Slay. They're trading for Jalen Ramsey. They trade for DK Metcalf. They sign Aaron Rodgers. Like I think the Steelers realize that they are going all in, right? They probably see Watt and Cam Hayward and those guys, and they say, hey, like, let's make the most out of this. Let's make sure that we hit the gas pedal when we're really hitting the gas pedal. And I'm not saying that the Bengals haven't, but sometimes it feels like, it's like, man, now is the time to hit the gas, put the gas pedal on the floor. And it's part of a negotiation game, but I would agree with you. I also feel more confidently that the Steelers are going to get Watt's deal done, maybe even before Hendrickson's deal gets done.
I like your analogy. Sometimes you do have to take the fast lane if you're going to pass everybody up. But if you're going to stay in that middle lane and go the same speed as everybody else, what are we really doing here, Trevor? What are we really doing? Last question, because we got to talk about Shemar Stewart.
Mm-hmm.
I'll start with this because we have to. There are certain measurables that people go by, and we can't really talk about the contract stuff because it is what it is. I believe sooner or later they're going to get that worked out. it really is about, are they going to get him signed to a contract with him feeling really part of the franchise and feeling wanted and needed by the franchise? Or is there going to be some animosity between the two? I would love to see them get this deal done in a good-natured way that leads to great momentum and great team morale. That remains to be seen. But the 4.5 sacks is what people keep going back to with Shemar Stewart coming out of Texas A&M. I found one comp that's very comparable to what he did in college. Talent was here, production was lower, and that is Danielle Hunter at LSU. He had the exact same number, 4.5 sacks in 3 years at LSU, Trevor. He now has 99.5 sacks going into his 10th NFL season. So the college production didn't match what we got at the pros. You know why? Because we do get better. We do develop. I'm not going to hold the 4.5 sacks against Shemar Stewart. You know why? Because when I put the tape on, he's disruptive. He's hard to block. He destroyed double teams, and he got pressure on the opposing quarterback so that his teammates could get all the sacks. That's the nuance of what we get with Shemar Stewart. I want to get your take on it.
Yeah, and look, Danielle Hunter has been an unbelievable pro, right? I mean, the player that he has developed into, even at this point in time, is just so unbelievably productive. What an NFL career. It's been unbelievable. Is he ever going to reach Danielle Hunter's status? I don't know if he's ever going to be that sack master type of player, but I do think it's a really good point that you bring up with Stewart, because Texas A&M's front was really a lot more about gap discipline up front and allowing the linebackers to be as clean as possible to make the tackles, right? It was, you're not necessarily, these colleges, yes, like development is part of what you do, but they're trying to win college football games. So they're not necessarily like trying to make Shemar Stewart like the next great NFL sack master. And I think a really good example of that is look at Shemar Stewart's teammate, Nick Scorton. Nick Scorton had 15 tackles for loss and 10 sacks his sophomore season when he was with Purdue, because Purdue put him in a wide 6 and a wide 7 alignment and let him tee off against the quarterback. And that's what he did. You know what Nick Scorton had last year? 5 sacks. 5.
There you go.
And so it's like, and Nick Scorton, he had been asked about that like throughout the draft process of like, hey, you know, like what was the difference? And he's like, it's very different. Like what was asked of me at A&M was different. Now, not that he never got the chance to tee off and go after the passer, but it was a different system. It was a different alignment. It was just very different what Texas A&M wanted to do. And so it is very easy to Bleav that he is going to be getting more than a sack and a half a season with the Cincinnati Bengals. And you draft him for that to be the case. And so, again, it's going to take a little bit of development for him. I think, unfortunately, he's missing key developmental time here for his rookie season. But like you said, I hope that they just can get to a point where they both feel good, that he's able to hit the ground running, and hopefully he gets to play opposite Trey Hendrickson when the season starts.
Think about this. We came into the offseason asking a lot of questions about what Al Golden was going to do with the Cincinnati Bengals defense. And as we sit here less than 1 month away from the start of training camp, the Cincinnati Bengals are looking like they're going to be without their 2 starting defensive ends when camp start. Providing a new contract is coming for Trey Hendrickson, and that the rookie even signs a contract void of the language that's now being included in his rookie deal. Trevor Sikkema, you are the best, my friend. Thank you for providing some nuance to our conversation today here on the Bleav in Bengal podcast. We want to thank everyone for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again with us next week.